Morning everybody, my name is James Wimpress and this is my colleague Stephen Webster. We are currently part of a project. It's a brand new project in the Environment Agency. We've just been going over a year and it's looking to address problems with pollution of watercourses and surface water flooding from land use. We've never really done this before in the Environment Agency. We've had one chap who's covered most of the country dealing with soils and soil management and runoff. So we've put together a team to address the increasing amount of surface water flooding events that we're seeing down here in Cornwall. So we'd like to tell you a bit about the project, how it started and what we do, and I'm going to pass over to Stephen to take you through the presentation. So nice to see you all.
Yeah, good morning everyone. I've got the role of running you through a quick presentation on just what we do in our team and some of the work that we're doing proactively across Devon and Cornwall with key people in the agricultural community. To reduce surface water flooding and fluvial flooding and stop hopefully pictures like that on the right. That's maize stubble. That could have quite easily been taken probably beginning of this week, but that photo is from a couple of years ago. So our role, we work proactively across Devon and Cornwall with key members of the agricultural community, whether that be big agribusinesses, landowners, agronomists, land agents, anyone that's got a say really in how land is managed across our area. We're focusing, our work with them is to tweak the decisions that they're making, whether that be on cultivations, cover crops, crop choice, to try and prevent surface water flooding and things like that. We also work with Cormac and Devon County Council as they're the lead local authority for surface water flooding. So surface water flooding incidents will go into them, and then Dion or Devon County Council will refer that to our team if land management has played a role in that flooding. Being the Environment Agency, we also respond to environmental incidents. Our team will respond to incidents where soil erosion has polluted a watercourse. And we'll be looking to take enforcement action either with environmental permitting regulations or farming rules for water. So proactive work, influencing crop choice. Certain crops have different risks. Maize, for example, might be more high risk than grass ground. So we're trying to look at key areas where we can de-risk cropping. Cultivations, soil structure is something that I will talk about quite a lot in this presentation. It's very important for sort of water infiltration and reducing flooding. Helping to develop and improve risk assessments with LiDAR mapping. So LiDAR mapping is the top picture that you can see here. We've had planes that have flown the country, and they assume if the catchment was concrete, where's that water going to flow? And then from that mapping, you can understand the risks associated with the land above it. This isn't in Devon and Cornwall. I thought I'd better get a picture from outside the area, just in case this was one of your houses or something. This is in Dorset, and the fields above the church. The flow pathways sort of intersect on the church, so that church would be at risk of flooding, subject to the management of those fields and the management of the forest above it. So that's the level of mapping that we've been giving to the agricultural community to try and improve risk assessments. That's something that's not been done before. And then we're trying to develop sustainable businesses because our team wants to see profitable agriculture in Cornwall. Whether that be DAFs, collie that you'll listen to in a moment, dairy, anything. It's the more profitable we have an agricultural community, the less risk that they have to take with regards to land management. So that's the proactive work. Incident response. Again, we're looking to take enforcement for water pollution with farming rules for water. So when I go to an incident or we go to an incident, we're looking at soil structure, cropping, cultivations, and basically every agronomic decision gets fed into that. And then we will look to take an enforcement response with regards to that. More importantly, for the immediate future, when we go to an incident, we're looking at the state of that soil and we're trying to make that soil safe to stop any future flooding. I've pulled on Newton Poppleford in East Devon here. So Newton Poppleford on the green sands in East Devon. So that soil has a very low clay content, very high sand content. So the heavy rain caps the soil. So the soil went as hard as concrete, really. There's no infiltration from that soil for any future rainfall events. So any small shower that's landing on those fields is running off and straight into the back of people's houses. What we did immediately the week after was rip the whole block of maize, so sacrifice the crop in collaboration with the farmer, and established a quick growing cover crop just to protect it throughout the summer months. So what can be done with land management to reduce flood risk? Soil structure on the freely draining soil types that we have predominantly in Cornwall and Devon. So soil structure is very important to allow water to infiltrate not just the topsoil but through the subsoil and down into the water table, and prevent any overland flow, which is absolutely what we do not want. Soil organic matter, again, very important for two things. Soil organic matter helps with maintaining that soil structure. So a higher soil organic matter gives body to the soil, if you will, and really holds it in place and a bit of strength. Also, organic matter holds a lot of water. I think 1% of soil organic matter holds about 100,000 litres of water per acre. So that's a football pitch of land. So increases in soil organic matter can really hold water in the catchments. And the last thing that we're looking at is good soil cover. So crop choice obviously influences this. That's just if you did get overland flow, you're trying to slow it going overland over the top of the surface, and also you're trying to stop that soil erosion going with it and polluting watercourses. I included this photo just because it explains in a bit more detail sort of some of the soils that we have in Devon and Cornwall. The vast majority of soils in Cornwall should follow the first line. So we've got permeable topsoil. Most of Cornwall's over slate, so slate should be permeable. So we'd follow the first line down to the water table and then come out at the bottom of the hill in springs, etc. And then the bottom of the hill, you've got your saturated soil. So these are your alluvial soils. They lie wet. That's just the way of those soils. The second line is for sort of less permeable soils. So areas over granite, so Bodmin Moor, West Penwith, or the clay soils in North Devon. They don't have a high rainfall acceptance because of the subsoil condition, geology. So understanding which soil type you are in the catchment and how water should flow in that catchment largely affects the peak flows of the flooding and how we're trying to reduce that flooding. Again, what we do not want is for water, when it should be following that first line, to go straight over the top in those black arrows, because that increases sort of the hydrographs, which is I'll come on to in a minute with some of the work that we've done. Just illustrates my point again. The vast majority of Devon and Cornwall should accept high amounts of rainfall if soil is in good condition. Just Bodmin Moor and West Penwith. The sort of bluish grey areas, that's sort of the areas that are over granite, but because their topsoil is quite deep, so it's well, going into soil science word, it's a trutium, so it's a deep loam over granite. So it should infiltrate quite a bit before it reaches that granite. And then there's East Devon, which is a whole different kettle of fish. Now it all sounds quite easy. Why can't we have soil in those conditions? Good soil structure, good organic matter, good cover all the time. But it's not that easy in real life because of quite a few reasons. The biggest reason is sheerly farm economics. Farmers are now in a situation where they're having to go to crops to try and produce a profitable farming business. So a lot have gone to maize, and they haven't just gone to maize early varieties, they've gone to maize late varieties to get that yield, to keep a dairy herd going. So the economics of a farming business has driven a higher risk cropping rotation, bigger and heavier machinery, partly again because of economics, but also because there's labour shortages in the agricultural community. So if you can have a tractor that's doing the work of that used to be 10 tractors back in the day, that's going to be the farmers wanting to do that. But of course, bigger and heavy machinery on wetter soils, that's causing soil compaction. That's preventing that flow of water through the topsoil. Less farmyard manure available. So a lot of the dairy farms have moved to slurry systems. Less farmyard manure, less organic matter going back into the soil. Also, cover crops, because the rotations have become so extreme, well not extreme, but so intense, there's little time in that rotation to include a cover crop to build organic matter. Rotations have gone that intense because farmers are wanting to do cash crop after cash crop, so there's little time in that rotation for a cover crop. Certain crops, such as daffodils, winter harvested veg, early potatoes, they inherently have got a high risk just because of the cropping activities associated with them. The harvesting of daffodils is going to go from Christmas right through to sort of March, April time. That's when the soil's wet. It's going to be compacted, so you're going to have a risk of overland flow because of the effects it's having on soil structure. And even with low risk crops, because of the extreme weather that we're getting at certain times of year when we haven't had that extreme weather before, during the summer, during August, low risk crops such as grass at establishment can become high risk because of the cropping activities associated with it. So there's a lot of issues that go through our head and farmers' heads, but we're trying to address all these issues to improve the situation really. So now I just want to go through a couple of bits that we're working on. One of my priority catchments is Mousehole down West Cornwall. It's a holistic approach for the whole catchment really. So I'm looking at soil structure. We're doing a whole soil structure analysis of this catchment, and then the Tumbleton that's also the catchment just to the bottom of it. They both flow into Mousehole. And there's 140 fields with I think about 14 landowners. We're soil structure surveying the whole catchment, so every field will have three holes dug into it to look at the state of the soil structure, not just in the top 30 centimetres using vest scoring, but also the subsoil to inform future cultivation decisions to allow water infiltration. Then we'll send off a soil analysis to the lab. This will give us organic matter testing, and then we'll benchmark this against a national database to indicate if soil organic matter levels in Mousehole are at a good level, if they're not, and if they're not, can we make a bit of a plan to improve those organic matter levels over time. As well as lab testing, we'll get nutrients and pH. pH affects sort of earthworm counts. So the biology of the soil, you want a decent pH. You should be aiming for about 6.5, 7 for peak biological life in the soil. That's the soil analysis of the catchment, but we recognise that in itself isn't going to protect the properties in Mousehole. It's just a part of it. So the Mousehole project also includes property flood resilience. There's about 100 properties that get in flood doors and sort of upgraded to be better protected for flooding. There's culvert improvements in Mousehole to address the pinch points of culverts to allow an increased flow through Mousehole. And then natural flood management. I've talked a lot about soils, which is what I focus on, but in the Mousehole catchment, there's going to be wetland creation at C-swept on the Tumbleton, and there's going to be floodplain reconnection just above Mousehole. So, although I'm focused on soils, there's a suite of other natural flood management techniques that we use in conjunction to hold and store water to prevent flooding. Going from West Cornwall now to East Cornwall, you couldn't go much further really. Similar approach. I'm working with the landowners to assess the soil structure and assess soil organic matters to try and make a bit of a plan in their farming business to improve soil health. Our EA flood and coastal risk management team are looking at the culvert sizes to address any pinch points. And then other natural flood management in the catchment, such as leaky dams, cross drains, to direct the flow around the catchment and to reduce the peak flows in King Sand and Core Sand. I've included this picture because this is some work that I did with one of our consultants with overland flow and how much that overland flow would affect the peak hydrograph. So these are 3 hydrographs, all with different soil structure in the catchment. The bottom orange line, that's when soil structure is in good condition, which is what we're aiming for. And then the 2 lines above is varying compaction in the catchment. And as you can see, sort of it really sort of flies up, and there's a lot of water all coming at once. So that's our proactive work in certain priority catchments. Cornwall being the way Cornwall works agriculturally, sort of we've been working with the large agribusinesses. You'll hear from Riviera in a minute, but also Varfell, Row Farming, Southern England Farms, the Weirs. There's a few farmers that are farming a large area, so you can make a big difference by talking to these and working with these companies directly. One that I'm particularly proud of is the work that we've done with Row Farming. So Row Farming, 2,200 acres of daffodils in West Cornwall, the second biggest daffodil farm in the world. Cornwall's responsible for about 90% of daffodil production globally, which is something that I think we can be proud of. But Row Farming we've worked with them to develop risk assessments. So they're only putting their daffodil crops in situations where surface water flooding and pollution is less risky. And that's with that LiDAR mapping that you saw earlier. And then we're into in-field mitigation, really. So at this is bulb planting. These are freshly cultivated fields. With daffodil bulbs, you have to de-stone it, you have to plough it. You're making the soil quite friable and quite high risk of soil erosion. But you've got to do those activities to make that's daffodil farming, really. You've got to do that to make it profitable. So then it's like, what interventions can we put in place to stop flooding and stop soil erosion? There's companion sowing winter barley at planting. So these freshly cultivated fields would have winter barley sown with them at quite a high rate, actually, almost a commercial rate for a winter barley crop. This stabilises the soil in the first year. Then you've got the Tide Ridger, which was this is a machine that was developed, I think in the 70s and the 80s for potato production in Somerset to stop soil erosion. And how it works is it goes up and down the field and it banks the soil in the tram lines. So if water was going to come over the top of this field, it would just soak into all these little divots made in the field. And then away from the winter barley companion planting, we're also looking at sowing grass seed, because daffodils are in the ground for 5 years. Winter barley will be 1 year and then it will be gone. If you can put grass seed in with those to stabilise those that soil in between, grass is going to last 5 years, so it stabilises the soil for the 5-year duration of the daffodil crop. That's row farming, but we're also doing something slightly different with Varfell Farms down West Cornwall. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour to the work that we're doing, both proactively and reactively. Yeah, thanks for listening. Any questions?
Quick question, as you're addressing all of, obviously we've got the agricultural runoff, at the same token is there also the addressing of the issue with the fertilisers also being runoff as well?
Yeah, so I'm a qualified agronomist, so I know the fertilisers and all that carry on. The work that I've been doing for Marizine Marsh is looking at nutrients in the catchment as well, making sure that those nutrients are applied with RB209 guidance. So RB209 guidance is the agricultural standard for how much fertiliser you're allowed to apply for each crop. You need to soil analysis before to know the fertiliser, to know the nutrient content in the soil, and then you've got to match your fertiliser input to the crop that you're growing. Largely, that is, that's being met. But there are certain issues where we have with sort of slurry, for example. Slurry stores, another team in the Environment Agency have been looking to improve slurry storage on dairy farms, but we're catching up really after 30 years of of farm infrastructures catching up from 30 years of not being where it needed to be. So it's going to be a process, but yeah, we're working to get there.
So at the same token, then obviously we're all aware about the reductions in EA being able to monitor this. So are you relying more and more on CSI testing to pick up where you do have obviously a lack of adherence to the regulations? So is it more that you're relying heavily on CSI testing to identify where there's these issues?
I mean, in terms of the issues, we will only be made of the issues if they're reported to us on our instant helpline. But in terms of targeting visits for regulatory inspections, the Agriculture Regulatory Task Force have been doing that with sort of the camel's been one of the areas. So they're looking at areas where you've got a high dairy concentration and then special areas of conservation. So the camel, the axe, Marizine Marsh for my work. So that's the inspections. But what you're looking for in terms of knowing if there's been a pollution incident, we're very much reliant on what gets reported into us at this present time. There is work that we do in our team, but this is coming back to soil erosion. So we've got bare earth mapping. So we can fly catchments or use satellite data to indicate which fields are bare earth at the moment. And I'll be running, for my priority catchments, I will run that bare earth mapping off in November and then go inspect those fields for checking compliance. So there are tools that we use, but for pollution like that, it's very much sort of looking at, sort of responded to incidents, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I was really interested in the row farming piece of work that you're doing, because I'm quite interested in that as well. I live down on the Lizzo Peninsula, and we have lots and lots of daffodil farms around us. And when we get the runoff, which we get a whole lot of rain, and it runs off into the roads and things and into our waterways, I also I do the water testing as well. We find that all the daffodil places use elastic bands, and on the runoff, these elastic bands are everywhere. They're getting into our waterways, they're getting into our nature because the birds are picking up thinking that they're worms, and they're killing all our baby birds. Are you looking at that as part of your piece of work?
There was a EA Plastics team that's actually just been disbanded, but I did look at it with Varfel and row farming, and the compromise that we've got is that they're very on it for tidying up, firstly, in the first place, keeping the place tidy, so they'll only issue elastic bands. And then the plastic in those elastic bands is biodegradable, so they've moved to a starch-based elastic band, so it should break down quite quickly. Saying that, it's not great if it's ending up in a watercourse at present.
I just thought it's worth
They,
pointing that out.
yeah, they've changed the technology, and it's getting a lot better, but it's there's still work for improvement.
These starch elastic bands, are these, so for wildlife, are they just dissolved, do they?
They'll-
Wildlife?
They'll break down over sort of a 1-2 year period. So they break down with UV light. It's the same with so maize under plastic. That's moved from a sort of an oils-based plastic to a starch-based plastic, and it just means that it breaks down a lot quicker. Saying that, it's new technology. We need to understand it a lot more. But yeah, it's a concern.
I'm just conscious that we've got people online with questions. Could we just take one or two from online? Perhaps.
Okay, so the first question we've got is, does plastic mulch affect runoff?
Yeah, it does. Richard Smith, who's our soils specialist in the team, he did some work in, I think it was West Cornwall, with early potatoes, and it did see it was more runoff, a higher SPR figure, so standard percentage runoff from plastic, but yeah. Right.
Do the companion crops make it more difficult and expensive to harvest the daffodils?
Did you all hear the question?
So do the companion crops with row farming make it more difficult to lift the bulbs after their 5-year cycle? We don't know, to be honest with you. It's new. What we'll do is we'll be spraying that grass off on the 4-year mark, and hopefully that will die back and it won't be a mulch. But it's of concern because anyone that's ploughed up a grass field will know that you can have quite a lot of root sort of matter. We don't know yet, so watch that space.
Okay, there was one last question and then we have to leave it because of the time. Sorry.
Are you in touch with all farmers, all the landowners in Cornwall, and are you able to distribute good practice to everybody? Do you need a conference?
I mean, we've got contact details for everyone, and we can do letter drops and that because we have access to the land registry, so we know who the landowners are. I mean, it's probably something that we should be looking at, really. I agree with you. So we're only 1.5 years into this project, and looking at how we've gone about things is we've targeted the high-risk crops and who's grown these significant areas. The Cornwall farming model, that's probably the right thing to do. So it's work with the people that grow in the high-risk crops on the large area and seeing if you can mitigate that to a degree. In Devon, you have a slightly different farming model, whereas there's a lot of dairy farms and they're all growing maybe 50, 100, 200 acres of maize. That's something that we probably should be looking at for their business model. We have gone through the agricultural community, so agronomists. We're meeting Pierce Seeds, which is the last big agronomy company based in the southwest, because they're advising farmers on the cropping practices to see if we can influence cropping going forward that way. But yeah, it's something that we probably should look at a conference, really.